Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ontario Cryptids. I'm so glad you're here because this week I've got a brand new encounter stories to share, each one packed with mystery, intrigue, and maybe even a few chills. If you enjoy this content, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss another upload. And if you have an encounter of your own, I'd love to hear about it. Send your stories to ontariocryptids@gmail.com. Now sit back and relax, and let's jump into this week's eerie and unforgettable tales. My dad and I went camping up at Goldbute Lookout. From 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m., we saw lights zigzag down the ridge into the valley while looking east towards Mount Jefferson. They would twinkle in and out of sight and appear about half an hour more or less from the previous sighting. Sometimes there would be only one, other times up to three. My dad thought they were just cars or people on ATVs, and that the red was their brakes. That could be what they were, but to be honest, I thought that if they were cars or ATVs, it was strange that their lights were visible from the top of the ridge at Goldbute Lookout, because any road on the side of that ridge would have been extremely small. I would assume their lights would have been basically pinpricks. But these lights were decent sized. The way they moved made me wonder if they were drones. My pops thought that that couldn't be the case because it wouldn't make sense. He doesn't put any stock in Bigfoot or supernatural, but I do. And I wonder if what we saw were UFO crafts or even the orb of lights that often get associated with Sasquatch, the Fae, and other paranormal entities. Anyone else seen lights around Detroit Lake, Oregon, or specifically up on Goldbute Lookout? I live in North Georgia, and I believe I had an encounter recently. I never saw a creature, but I am still convinced I stumbled into Bigfoot or Skunk Ape territory, and I was warned out. I've been looking for a piece of land to homestead for a couple of years now, so I have explored and hiked all over this area in some rough terrain. This last piece of land I was looking at was in northeastern Alabama. The first clue as to what I was walking into was on the road leading into the property. There were two full-size wooden Sasquatch-shaped cutouts on the side of the roads leading up the mountain, a quarter of a mile or so apart. I knew there was a vacation rental property at the top of the mountain road, so I figured it was just a fun little thing to get the tourists talking. I now think they were more of a warning. I parked on the side of the road at the edge of the property and hiked over the first hill into the land. It was very quiet and isolated, which is wonderful normally, but felt ominous that day for some reason. As soon as I got to the bottom of the first hill, I had to gasp as I almost stepped onto an eviscerated raccoon carcass, very fresh. The main thing I remember were its intestines glistening in the light. The road up the mountain was unpaved and steep, so I don't think it was a traffic casualty that limped into the woods to die. It seemed like it was left there on purpose. It seemed odd for an animal to be killed and not eaten. Another 20 minutes or so into the hike, I come across a deer skull with a huge rack of antlers. Most hunters I know would have taken the skull for those glorious antlers. After another 20 minutes of rising very high in elevation, at this point, I came to a large rock outcropping. I thought to myself how perfect of a shelter that would make in inclement weather. As I got closer to the rock's ledge, I started getting a strong smell of feces or rot or something organic and foul. I can't describe it. You don't really smell anything like that in the woods. It's just all forest smell. As soon as I smelt that, I got incredibly spooked. I never get spooked, but I damn sure did that day. I pulled my gun, chambered around and hauled ass back down the mountain and out of there. I've researched it and I found people talking about possibilities of Bigfoot using pheromones to ward off intruders. I really wonder if I didn't walk into one's territory and got really close to its den. I've been thinking about it for months now. I've been a little apprehensive about sharing this as I'm still wondering what happened. For a little background story, I was 13 when this happened. For the age of 13, I had spent most of those years with a gun in my hand and more time in the woods than the average kid. I didn't spook easily and was confident in my ability. I had no problem walking in the woods at night as long as I had my rifle. It was about 3 years back on a deer hunt with my dad up in North Idaho. We wanted to find a new hunting spot as our old one had about 1,000 Californians who thought it was their new home. We found a cutoff road that went for a couple of miles to another cutoff road which went for several more miles to an old mine with a lake close by. I walked off while my dad got some lunch going. I was out by the lake with my fishing pole killing some time. I found a good-looking spot to cast out. So I unhooked my line when a rock about the size of a grapefruit went flying by my head at what seemed like 100 miles per hour. Mind you, it was completely flat for quite a ways around. It didn't fall off a steep mountain face or hill of some sort. I quickly slipped my rifle off my back into my hands, knowing that my dad wouldn't ever throw a rock that big that close to me. I looked around to see if my dad had seen that, which I believe he had because he had a surprised look on his face. So making my way back as quickly as I could without making myself look like a wimp, got to my dad, where he promptly asked me if I heard that. I replied with, "Yeah, it almost hit me." He looked a little confused and then asked what I was talking about. I told him about the rock incident. He was talking about 3 knock sounds. I said I hadn't because I was worried about something throwing a rock at me. We waited for a moment longer where we heard more knocks. Sure as shit, 3 loud knocks like someone hitting a tree with a baseball bat. We went to look at the mine where the knocks had come from and didn't find anything. We decided it was about time we head back to camp. There was an old cabin that we both wanted to check out, so we stopped to look about. It was quite old with the roof caved in and mostly rotted away. There was a burn barrel that seemed to be newer than the cabin, so me and my dad both peeked in. There was an old can with some writing, so I leaned in and grabbed it. My dad grabbed another can and we were looking at each other and then at the cans when a little rock about 1/2 an inch wide came flying right in between both of us straight into the burn barrel. I was looking at my dad's hands and he was doing the same for me. Clearly, neither of us had thrown that rock. We both looked into the direction it came from. Nothing, no sound, no smell. My dad, cool as always, says, "Maybe Bigfoot is real," and started walking back to the Jeep. I tried not to look worried, figuring how I had my rifle, a 7mm Ram mag, and I felt like I could take down any game in America, but still, the pressure got to me, and I found myself speed walking back to the Jeep with a horrible feeling like I was being watched. I climbed into the Jeep and we went on our way when not a 1/4 mile down the road lay a small tree, maybe the size of an arm, about 15 feet long. We drove right over it when just a little past that lay a bigger tree that was uprooted and impossible for a person to push over. I quickly got worried when my dad said we left a chainsaw at camp and that I should stand guard with my rifle while he hooked up the winch. I got out and felt fine. I stood there while he hooked up the rope and started to pull when all of a sudden I felt that feeling of being watched. It's like it punched me in the face. It was so strong, it was hard to stay still. I figured this is what you're out here to do, just to stand guard, and I'll be damned if I'm going to stop just because of some feeling. It felt like I was just waiting to get hit by a train or something when all of a sudden it went away, like a weight lifted from my shoulders. I took a deep sigh of relief. My dad was almost done putting the winch up. He got it rolled away, so I hopped in the car and was glad that that was over. I thought, glad I won't have to do that again. And as soon as I thought that, my dad says, I'll be damned. Looked like someone doesn't want us to leave. There in the road lay a tree bigger than the last. He hops out, hooks up the winch again. Without being told, I know it's my duty to stand guard. I get out and position myself where I think I'll be able to fight off anyone or anything charging my way. I stand there almost the whole time feeling as cool as a cucumber when right as I'm about to hop back in, my body gets the chills. It was hard to put down the rifle as I was putting it in the car. Like some kind of instinct was telling me, don't put that down, you're going to need it. Don't put that down, you're going to need it. I jumped in as quickly as I could and slammed the door closed. My dad threw it in gear and we took off. We talked about all the odd things that happened and we decided that it wasn't anyone messing with us due to the fact that we were far away from anyone else and hadn't seen any tracks or anything. It wasn't an animal, excluding Bigfoot, because I'm not sure of any animal in North America that can heave a rock like that. I've had many trips in the wilderness since. I've never had that feeling without cause. It's like a superpower. I get that feeling, I'll stop, look, listen, and smell. Sure as shit, there will be a deer moving into the clearing or something of the sort. I'm convinced that there was something in the woods that day with me and my dad, and I'm just not sure what. I think it was a Bigfoot, and so does my dad. If anyone has any idea, I'd love to know what you think. Well, that's going to wrap things up for today, and I want to thank everybody for sticking around until the end. I really hope you enjoyed today's encounter stories. A big thank you goes out to our current channel members, Elizabeth, Jim, and Teresa. Thank you guys for your continued support. It truly means the world to me. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that like button, the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an encounter of your own, I'd love to hear about it. Send your stories to ontariocryptids@gmail.com and it'll be featured in a future episode. Wishing you all have a fantastic week ahead. Don't miss out on next week's episode of Ontario Cryptids, where more unheard of encounters awaits.